I was never meant to speak this. Not out loud. Not into a world this asleep. But I made a vow. If I returned from what I saw, if I came back from where they took me, I would speak, even if my voice trembled, even if the silence around me screamed to stay quiet. This truth, it has been hidden for centuries, buried beneath prayers we forgot how to pray, covered by rituals that never touched the heart of God, silenced in the name of control, censored by fear. But it lives, it breathes, it weeps beneath the floorboards of history. I died, and in the place where breath no longer mattered, I saw what they never wanted anyone to see. He showed me. And what he showed me, what he entrusted me with, was more terrible and more beautiful than anything I had ever known. I wasn't worthy of it. I still am not. But I carry it because I must. They call them lost. But they were never lost. They were taken, stolen, erased. And yet, heaven remembers. Heaven has never forgotten. They cry out, not in bitterness, but in a sound deeper than any grief on earth. Their names are known. Their identities were never discarded. They are waiting. They are speaking. And I was sent back to say what they cannot. This isn't a dream. It's not a metaphor. This is a testimony that bleeds. A witness forged in the place between life and judgment. There is a truth beneath the truth we were taught. A light that terrifies the darkness. A name that cannot be silenced. And when he showed me the scroll, when I saw the names written in fire, I knew. I had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. You were not meant to hear this in passing. You were chosen. Just like I was chosen to carry it, you were chosen to receive it. The silence is a graveyard. And yet, beneath it, something holy is rising. This is the truth they feared. This is the truth they buried. This is the secret of the lost babies. And I must speak now, before the veil closes again. Because the time is now. Because the truth must be told. Because they were chosen. Because you were brought here to remember. Before the silence shattered, before the veil lifted and the children called my name, I was like everyone else. I woke up, I breathed, I moved through days like a ghost wrapped in skin. There was nothing miraculous about my life. No sign in the sky. No thunder in my chest. Only the slow ticking of ordinary moments. Coffee gone cold before I remembered it was there. Dust collecting on unread Bibles. Screens glowing in the dark. 1,000 prayers I never prayed. I lived surrounded by noise, but inside there was a hum of absence. A hollow sound. Something missing. I smiled when I had to. I worked when I needed to. I wore responsibility like a coat 2 sizes too heavy. People called me strong. But they didn't see the cracks. They didn't feel the emptiness that whispered behind my ribs. There were moments, quiet, unspoken moments, when I would wake in the night and feel a presence beside me. Not a person. Not a ghost. But a weight, like someone trying to be born through memory. I used to dream of cribs that were never filled. I used to hear laughter in the walls that no one else heard. And sometimes, without knowing why, I would cry while folding laundry. I told no one. Because what do you say when your grief has no name? When your arms ache for a child your body never held? When you know deep in the marrow of your being that there was once a heartbeat, and now there is only silence. There are wounds the world refuses to acknowledge. Some women bury their grief behind careers. Some men drink theirs into shadows. And some of us, we forget on purpose. We train our hearts to forget. We call it strength. But heaven remembers what we try to forget. I didn't talk about the miscarriages. I didn't count the years. I didn't let myself wonder if I had failed them. I didn't let myself believe they had names. But something inside me did. I would pass by churches and feel my knees go weak. I would hear the word child and feel my spirit tremble. I would walk into hospitals and feel a pressure in my chest, like someone pulling on a thread that started somewhere beyond the veil. I couldn't name the ache, so I buried it, and the world let me. The world always lets you bury the sacred, as long as you keep smiling, as long as you keep breathing, as long as you keep forgetting. But heaven does not forget, and long before I knew what was coming, I felt it, in the silence before storms, in the gentle weight of unseen eyes, in the invisible places where grief turns to gold and mourning becomes a doorway. I thought I was broken, but I was being prepared. I thought I was numb, but I was being awakened. I would find myself staring into mirrors, wondering if my reflection was hiding something, if there was more to me than what I allowed the world to see. Sometimes I'd place my hand on my stomach, not knowing why, and for a second, I'd feel warmth, A flutter? A memory? They were already calling me. Not with words, not with sound, but with longing. The kind of longing only heaven understands. The kind of longing that only the soul hears. And the strangest thing, I started to feel watched, not in fear, but in holy awareness, as though the air itself was waiting for something. I would sit on the porch at dusk and the wind would speak in tones too soft for the ear, but my spirit heard. And deep inside, something ancient stirred. Something sacred. You were brought here to remember. It came like a pulse repeating through me. You were brought here to remember. I tried to ignore it. I filled my days with tasks, distractions, noise. But the silence found me. It always does. And the presence grew. I would feel it in the shower, in the market, in line at the bank. A tug. A thread. A name I hadn't spoken, whispered in the marrow of my bones. The veil was thinning. Something was approaching. And though I didn't know it yet, my spirit did. The womb of my soul had already begun to open. Because heaven was preparing me for something I could not yet bear, but would one day have to carry. And in the stillness, in the ache, in the unspeakable places of longing and loss, one refrain echoed again and again, like the breath of God against the hollow places in me. You were brought here to remember. You were brought here to remember. You were brought here to remember. Let me take you to the moment everything broke open. The moment where breath left me, and eternity entered in. It happened on a day that looked like every other. The kind of day we forget as it passes. The kind with no warning, no thundercloud, no final note. But heaven doesn't need warnings. Heaven moves in silence. I was walking. That's all. Just walking. And then the ground tilted. Or maybe it was me. My chest tightened as if invisible hands reached through the veil and pulled at the roots of my breath. The air turned thick like syrup, like grief. My legs buckled. The world slowed. I remember the color of the sky. It was gray but tender, like an old bruise healing. I remember the way the leaves moved on the trees, as if they too had been commanded to hold still. I remember the sound of my own heart, distant, reluctant, like it knew this wasn't a place it could stay. And then came the silence. Not the silence of absence, but the silence of transition. The kind that sits at the edge of a holy threshold. The kind that waits. I collapsed. I felt the pavement cold beneath me, but it didn't hurt. I didn't feel pain. I only felt separation, like fabric tearing in slow motion. People were shouting, I could sense that, but their voices were underwater. I tried to speak, but words no longer mattered. My mouth moved, but something in me had already stepped away. My vision blurred at the edges, softening like the edge of a memory. And then, breath left me. But I was still there. I didn't vanish. I didn't disappear. I was pulled upward, gently, reverently, as if the hands that made me were calling me home. There was no panic, only awareness and peace. A peace too large for language. A peace that doesn't erase you, but expands you. I saw my body lying still, people around me frantic, time twisting like a ribbon in water. And then, I rose, higher, freer, weightless for the first time in forever. Not just the weight of the body gone, but the weight of grief, shame, memory, silence. All of it peeled away like old skin. I hovered above the moment, watching the scene like someone reading the last page of a book they never wrote. I felt sadness, not for me but for all I left behind. For what I hadn't yet said. For the names I never called. For the tears I never allowed. But it was brief, because something greater was calling. There was a pull, a wind, not outward but inward, as if I was being drawn not away from earth but deeper into reality itself. Deeper into what had always been true, just hidden. The world faded. The sounds of sirens, voices, machines, they fell behind like the echo of a forgotten life. And in its place, a warmth rose like dawn behind the eyes of my soul. Light, but not the kind that blinds. It was a living light, woven with music, heavy with memory, older than creation. I passed through something. A veil. A film between the seen and the unseen. It shimmered like water catching the sun, and then broke open around me. And I was not alone. The air was different. Not air at all. More like breath, like presence. Like the breath of God filling every molecule of space. I could feel it, moving through me, around me, within me. There was no body. But I was still me. More me than I had ever been. Every pain had loosened its grip. Every secret I had buried beneath my ribs felt exposed, yet not judged. See, held, redeemed. I drifted, or was carried, towards something vast, something alive, something holy, and I knew I was entering the beginning of everything. This was not a place of endings. It was the origin of truth, the source of song, the root of memory, and still, I felt them, the presence of others, souls, some near, some far, some ancient yet familiar, as if I had known them before I had breath, as if they had waited for me. And within all this beauty, all this vastness, I heard it, that voice, that name, that calling. He called my name in the dark, and everything in me, everything that had ever longed, broken, bled, or wondered, answered without hesitation. Because I remembered, because something in me always remembered. And in that moment, as earth released me, and heaven welcomed me, I understood that death is not the end. It is a door. And behind that door, the story we were never allowed to tell waits to be spoken. You were brought here to remember. Return to the fire. Return to the fire. Return to the fire. Let me take you through that door. Because what I saw, what I was shown, will burn away everything you thought was true. The moment I passed through the veil, I knew I had never truly been alive until that breathless place between worlds held me like a mother holds a child. There was no ceiling, no floor, no boundary that could be measured by the eyes of flesh. It was light, but not light that shines. It was light that sings. It moved with harmony, like breath orchestrated into color. It was layered in melodies that wrapped around me like a robe of knowing. Each note was a memory, each tone a truth, each chord a name heaven never forgot. Time unraveled. Past and future knelt beside each other like old friends. And I stood in the space between, no longer bound by clocks or calendars or consequence. I was surrounded by presence, saturated in love, undone by holiness. And then, they began to appear. At first I felt them before I saw them. Like wind arriving before the rain. Like laughter that starts in the soul before reaching the mouth. They were children, but not fragile, not broken, not lost. They were radiant, oh, glorious, not ghosts, not shadows, souls, light clothed in innocence, voices woven in joy. They didn't speak not the way we speak. Their presence spoke. Their eyes were pools of knowing, ancient and pure, wide with the kind of love that doesn't age. They surrounded me, not with desperation but with delight. They danced in patterns I could not follow but deeply understood. Their laughter was layered with prophecy. Their movement was worship. I wept. Not because I was afraid, but because I had never encountered anything so beautiful, so unharmed by the darkness of earth. I had lived my life believing they were lost, forgotten, erased. But they were here. They had always been here. And in their faces, I saw the faces I had forgotten. I saw glimpses of futures that never unfolded. I saw the children never named, the lullabies never sung, the hands never held. And I understood. Heaven had not forgotten what earth had discarded. These were not victims. These were vessels. They carried something sacred, something the enemy had feared. And in their silence I heard it, a roar deeper than any war, a song older than any lie, a truth buried for centuries in the soil of shame. They were never forgotten. They were never erased. They were chosen. Chosen before time. Chosen before breath. Marked by light, hidden by darkness. And I was surrounded by them now. They danced through fields of light that shifted in waves of golden blue. Colors we do not have on earth. Hues that sang forgiveness. Shades that healed. Some of them looked at me. Some touched my arm. And when they did, memories entered me, memories that weren't mine yet somehow were. I saw wombs weeping in silence. I saw rooms with ultrasound screens and silent prayers. I saw decisions made in desperation, and mercy standing nearby, watching, waiting. But more than anything, I saw them. Not as what the world called them, mistakes, accidents, tissue. No, I saw them as heaven saw them, carriers of light, seeds of awakening, vessels of unspoken glory. They were chosen. And in that place I felt their intercession. Not for themselves, but for us. They weren't angry. They were radiant with love. They bore no bitterness, only longing. Longing for us to remember. Longing for us to return. Longing for us to know what they now knew. That every life matters. Every soul is a song. Every cry is recorded. Every spark of being, whether days long or only moments, is eternal in the eyes of the one who formed the galaxies. I stood there, trembling, ruined, and restored all at once. Because I knew this was not just a visit, this was an unveiling. I had stepped into the holiest chamber of memory, the place where heaven keeps what earth tried to forget, the place of the lost babies. And they were not lost. They were found. They were not destroyed. They were preserved. They were not weak. They were fierce in light. They were chosen. And as they circled around me, some smiling, some singing, some simply being, I felt the weight of the vow begin to form in my chest. Because I knew this moment would end. I knew I could not stay. But before I returned to the world of flesh and clocks, I would be shown something greater still. A revelation that would pierce history. A truth hidden by kings and prophets and priests. But before that, this moment, this sacred still moment, of laughter untainted, of innocence unburied, of glory unbroken. Here in the light that sang, surrounded by souls the world pretends never existed, I was undone. And the refrain echoed through me like breath through a flute. They were chosen. They were chosen. They were chosen. And so was I. To return. To remember. To speak. To burn. Return to the fire. Return to the fire. Return to the fire. And then he came. Not from a distance. Not with the sound of thunder or the blast of some ancient trumpet. He was just there. Suddenly. Quietly. Utterly. Like breath I had always known, now taken form. He stood in the light, but he was not made of it. He was the light. Clothed in radiance so pure, it seemed to mourn and rejoice at once. His presence was not loud, but it filled every corner of eternity. Every thought bent to him, every memory bowed in reverence. I could not speak, not because I lacked a mouth, but because every fiber of my soul knew this was the one who spoke me into being. He did not need to introduce himself. There was no mistaking it. This was Jesus, not the Jesus painted in churches, not the distant figure framed in stained glass. This was the Lamb that was slain. This was the Word before time. This was the eyes that burned and wept and knew. He looked at me, and in that gaze, I was known, entirely, without defense, without explanation. There was no accusation, no shame, no weight of my failures hung in his expression. Only understanding, total, eternal, holy. He saw everything. The prayers I whispered while bleeding. The nights I closed my eyes and hoped never to wake. The blame I buried in silence. The grief I didn't allow myself to name. He saw it all. And he loved me anyway. His gaze was a fire that didn't burn, only revealed. It stripped me of pretense, of pride, of fear. It laid me bare and called it beloved. And then he reached out. One hand. Light flowing from it like mercy liquefied. And when his palm touched the center of my spirit, everything opened, not with pain but with truth, images, visions, memories not from my life but from beyond it, from time's beginning, from the throne of the Most High. I saw the scroll, not paper, not ink, but a record, living, glowing, heavy with eternity. I saw the names, thousands, millions, too many for the tongue to shape. They glowed with golden fire, yet they wept. They were the names of the forgotten, the discarded, the silenced, the lost babies. Some lived for seconds. Some never left the womb. Some were named. Most were not. But here in this sacred place, they were honored. Here they were known. Here they were not statistics or shadows. They were sons. They were daughters. They were songs God never stopped singing. I wanted to fall. I wanted to collapse beneath the weight of what I saw. But his hand held me. And in that holding I heard him. Not with ears. Not with sound. His voice entered me like breath entering dust. Like thunder spoken in stillness. You must carry this truth back. I shook. Not in fear but in holy terror. In the awe that only comes when you realize you are standing inside the command of God. You must carry this truth back. The words were not optional. They were not suggestion. They were vow. A mantle placed upon me, not as punishment, but as honor. A terrible, beautiful, sacred honor. To carry what others buried. To speak what others silenced. To lift the veil they stitched shut with theology and politics and fear. You must carry this truth back. He showed me more. I saw altars where innocence had bled. I saw systems built to hide the grief. I saw principalities masquerading as mercy. I saw the war, ancient, calculated, unrelenting, against the seed of the woman. I saw why the enemy hated the children. Because they bore the light of awakening. Because in their lives, however short, there were prophecies hidden. There were nations inside them. There were songs that would have shaken thrones. And so they were silenced. But heaven did not forget. And now neither could I. His hand pressed to my spirit once more. And this time, he wept. Tears of fire. Tears of grief. Tears of knowing. Not weakness. Compassion. Because he had seen them too. Every child. Every cry. Every heartbeat stopped too soon. And still, he loved. Still, he calls. You must carry this truth back. I wanted to stay. Every cell of my being cried out to remain in that place. To stay with him. To linger in the light that had no shadow. But the calling burned hotter than longing. He turned his gaze from me to the children. And they looked at me too. Not with sorrow. Not with blame. With trust. They knew I would go. They knew I had been chosen. And again I heard it. He called my name in the dark. He called my name in the dark. And now, I had to carry the fire. Not for me, but for them. Not for the world, but for the truth. To say what no one dared say. To speak for those who could no longer speak. To be the voice crying from the grave. That they were never truly gone. They were chosen. And so was I. Returned to the fire. And then, he showed me. Not with words. Not with explanation. He opened the veil wider, and what I saw cannot be forgotten. Not in 1,000 lifetimes. Not even in eternity. It was a field. Still. Silent. Boundless. At first it looked empty, quiet in that deceiving way the earth hides its grief. But then the light shifted, and the ground began to breathe. Beneath the soil I saw them. Bones. Tiny. Countless. Layered in silence. Stacked like history we chose not to remember. They pulsed faintly with golden light, as if each one still carried the echo of a heartbeat, the residue of a name never spoken aloud. Each one a story. Each one a song cut short. Each one a life never lived but never forgotten. And yet even here, heaven was not silent. An angel stood beside me, not winged, not wingless, not male, not female, but a presence wrapped in authority and sorrow. Their face was like time weeping and truth burning in the same breath. And they spoke, without lips, without sound. And I heard every word like thunder inside my soul. These, the angel said, are not forgotten. These are not casualties. These are not statistics. These were warriors. These were prophets. These were messengers sent before their time. These were the ones the enemy feared. They tried to erase them because they feared them. They tried to erase them because they feared them. Each syllable carved itself into the fabric of my spirit. And I looked again at the field. What once seemed like death now shimmered with the beginnings of resurrection. The bones began to move, not in horror but in hope. The light within them stirred. And I understood. This was not a graveyard. This was a battlefield. And the war was never about politics or medicine or choice. It was about destiny. It was about the seed. A war not just against flesh but against future. A war against the image of God etched into every unborn child. A war against prophecy. Against nations hidden inside of wombs. Against voices that would have shaken the gates of hell. It was coordinated. It was ancient. It was spiritual. And I wept. Because I had called it other names. Because I had not seen it for what it truly was. And I asked in the trembling silence of my soul, why would they fear children? And the angel answered, not with words but with vision. I saw it. A child born into poverty who would have healed nations. Another who would have sung songs that broke chains. One who would have uncovered corruption with a single prayer. Another still who would have seen angels and led revivals in forgotten lands. But they never saw day, because the darkness feared their dawn. And the angel spoke again. They tried to erase them, because they feared them. And I saw the hands behind it. Not human. Not entirely. Dark hands, hands that twisted truth, wore robes of doctrine and called it wisdom. Hands that cloaked slaughter in silence. Hands that fed grief to mothers and guilt to fathers, then taught them to forget. But heaven did not forget. The names are still spoken there. I saw them written, not on scrolls but on stars, burning with glory. Each name a constellation of what could have been, what still will be. Because though they were taken, their purpose was not. It waited. It hovered. It breathed. Their blood did not dry. It cried out, not in revenge, but in remembrance. And the Lord hears. I fell to my knees, though I had no knees, and I wept the kind of tears that don't just come from sadness but from revelation, from finally seeing what was hidden in plain sight. We had made peace with the silence. We had learned to live with the void. But heaven had not. Heaven has been roaring through the silence. Heaven has been storing the cries. Heaven has been remembering what we forgot. And now, the veil is lifting. The field is stirring. The bones are moving. And the children, the ones lost, the ones taken, are returning in glory, not as ghosts, not as memories, but as justice wrapped in light. They will rise in songs. They will rise in callings. They will rise in the voices of the remnant. Because you cannot kill a prophecy. You can only delay its birth. And the birth pains have begun. They tried to erase them because they feared them. They tried to erase them because they feared them. But they were chosen. And so were we. To speak, to weep, to remember, to awaken. This is not just about the past. It is about now. It is about the call burning in your chest as you listen. It is about the dreams you've been having, the names you can't forget, the ache you carry without words. Because somewhere in your blood, in your history, in your soul, you carry the echo of a child never born, but not forgotten. They were chosen. You were chosen to be the mouth of memory, to be the voice of the fire. And the refrain has returned again, haunting and holy. He called my name in the dark. He called my name in the dark. He called my name in the dark. And now I call yours. Return to the fire. I was still in the light, still in that place where heaven speaks in visions, not syllables, when the atmosphere began to shift. The field of bones faded, and the stars above me opened like a scroll. And what I saw was not the end. It was the beginning. I saw a rising, a cry rising from the ashes. From the ground soaked in forgotten names came flame. From wombs that had emptied in grief came glory. The veil between what was and what could have been was torn open. I saw them, the ones who had once wept in silence, mothers who had carried guilt like a second skin, fathers who had buried their shame beneath silence. I saw them awaken, not in rage, but in fire, not in blame, but in mercy. The ones who had mourned the most became the carriers of light. Their eyes opened not just to memory but to mission. And where there was once shame, I saw crowns. Where there was once silence, I saw songs. Where there was once regret, I saw oil pouring like healing down their faces. They rose, not to mourn but to war, not to hide but to herald, not to curse but to call forth what was once buried. They were not simply comforted. They were commissioned. I saw mothers laying hands on nations. I saw fathers preaching with the fire of the children they never held. I saw broken hearts mended, not by denial, but by revelation. The children, they had not disappeared. They had simply gone ahead. And now their legacy returned in waves. Through dreams, through visions, through miraculous births, through prophetic utterance. I saw churches crack open like dry clay. I saw stained glass windows shatter with the sound of awakening. I saw altars drenched in tears, but this time the tears were not of sorrow. They were of release. The lost were not lost. They were seeds. And when the seeds broke open, they became forests. Forests of intercession. Forests of fire. Forests of those who could no longer be silenced. Children began prophesying. Old women danced again. Men who had been crushed by years of silence stood up, not to defend their pain but to proclaim the promise. There was a movement, not organized by men, not printed on banners, not live-streamed or scheduled, but holy, quiet at first like the whisper of a child's breath, and then louder like the roar of generations waking all at once. This isn't just about the past, it's about restoration. This isn't just about the past, it's about restoration. This isn't just about the past, it's about restoration. I saw children being born with names given to their parents in dreams. I saw women who were told they were barren give birth to twins, each one carrying a spiritual assignment. I saw the unborn begin to appear in visions to pastors, to intercessors, to ordinary people. Not as ghosts but as messengers. Not as wounds but as witnesses. And everywhere they appeared, revival followed. Because they had not vanished. They had gone into the heart of God and returned as awakening. I saw nations shake. I saw cities fall to their knees without a preacher. I saw the laws of men crumble before the laws of mercy. I saw schools erupt in worship because one child began to speak in a language no one taught them. And all of it, traced back to the ones who had once been called lost. The ones whose cries were once unheard, had become the sound of the trumpet. This isn't just about the past, it's about restoration. I saw a grandmother fall to her knees, holding the ultrasound photo of the baby she once aborted. And through her tears she said, "Forgive me." And in the spirit, I saw the child kiss her forehead. And I saw the chain break. The heavens trembled. Because forgiveness is not just a concept in heaven. It is a force. And when the blood of the silenced is met with the tears of the repentant, something holy explodes. This isn't just about the past, it's about restoration. I saw leaders repenting publicly, not because they were caught but because they were called. I saw revival sweep through forgotten towns, carried not by preachers but by children. Children whose very presence was a rebuke to the darkness. The legacy of the lost babies had become an army not with swords but with psalms. Not with anger but with oil. Not with fists but with fire. Their legacy was shaking the nations. And I saw it. One last vision before the scroll closed. A child, glowing with light, placing their hand on the chest of a sleeping man. And the man awoke, not just from slumber, from a lifetime of numbness. He opened his eyes and remembered the child he had tried to forget. And in that moment he knew he had not failed. He had been chosen, just as you have. You, who listen now. You, who have carried questions. You, who have wept behind closed doors. You, who have buried dreams in silence. You were not forgotten. You were brought here. You were chosen to awaken. This isn't just about the past, it's about restoration. This isn't just about the past, it's about restoration. And the voice came again, the one that haunts me even now. Soft as breath, loud as thunder, deep as eternity. He called my name in the dark. He called my name in the dark. He called my name in the dark. And now I call yours. Return to the fire. And then, I was falling. Not like gravity. Not like a drop through space. But like being pulled backward through memory. Away from the light. Away from the singing stars. Away from the field of names and the Lamb who wept. And I knew I was being sent back. Not because I wanted to leave. I didn't. Not because I asked. I hadn't. But because I had been marked. Because I had been trusted. I was a witness now. And witnesses don't stay. They return. They burn. They speak. So I returned. I opened my eyes to the hard white of fluorescent lights. To the stiff stillness of a hospital bed. To machines humming softly, unaware of the glory I had just left behind. I blinked once, twice, and the weight of the earth returned. Not just in my chest, but in my soul. Everything felt foreign. The colors were dull. The sounds were sharp. Time had weight again. The first breath back felt like breathing through cloth. The world was slower here, yet crueler, colder. I looked around but nothing made sense. I tried to speak but there were no words yet. Only tears. And silence. And fire. A fire deep in my chest, burning like the voice of God still echoing through my ribs. Keep speaking. That's what I heard. Even before I spoke a word to anyone. Even before I tried to explain. Even before the rejection came. The command had already been carved into my bones. Keep speaking. So I tried. I began to tell them. I told the nurses, the chaplain, my family. I spoke softly at first, like someone unwrapping something sacred, like someone opening a tomb with trembling hands. I told them what I saw, the field, the names, the fire, the children, the voice, and they smiled, but not with belief. They nodded, but not with understanding. They called it a dream, a hallucination, a byproduct of stress, a mercy mechanism of a dying brain. I told them again, slower, firmer, with the weight of eternity still in my voice. And still, they changed the subject. They changed the tone. They changed the way they looked at me. But I couldn't change what I knew. I couldn't forget what I'd seen. Not when their names still rang in my ears like the soft bells of heaven. Not when the fire still pulsed in my blood. And then, the resistance began. First, the little things. Glitches. My phone froze whenever I tried to type the testimony. Documents disappeared. Recordings failed. Emails wouldn't send. My voice was silenced not by chains, but by interference. Then came the dreams. Dark things. Shadows standing in corners watching me. Whispers and languages not spoken but felt. Sleep paralysis holding me down like a weight of smoke. I woke often with my heart racing, my chest heavy, as if the air itself didn't want me to breathe. And then came the isolation. Friends pulled away. People looked at me as if I had become a stranger. Some avoided me. Others argued. Some told me to move on. Others warned me I was becoming too intense. But I had seen eternity. How could I be casual again? How could I live small? How could I unsee the truth? I tried to be quiet, for a time. But every silence felt like betrayal. Every word unspoken was a weight on my chest. And still the command rang in my bones. Keep speaking. Keep speaking. The fire never left. It grew. The more I was mocked, the more it burned. The more I was ignored, the more it blazed. Because I had seen them. And once you've seen the light in their eyes, once you've heard the laughter of children heaven refused to forget, once you've touched the scroll that holds their names, you cannot return to silence. You must not. You were brought back to burn. You were brought back to speak. And it cost me. It cost relationships. It cost comfort. It cost the illusion of belonging. But it gave me something greater. Obedience. Clarity. Conviction. Because the war is real. And the darkness does not want this truth to spread. But I made a vow. In that place of fire and stars. In the presence of the Lamb who remembers every tear. In the company of the children who forgive and sing and wait. I made a vow. And I will not be silenced. Not by misunderstanding. Not by shadows. Not by fear. Because he called my name in the dark. He called my name in the dark. He called my name in the dark. And now I must speak. Even if no one listens. Even if every door closes. Even if the cost burns me down to the bone. Because they were chosen. And they are still waiting for someone to speak their names. So I say again. With holy fire in my chest and eternity behind my eyes. Keep speaking. Keep speaking. Keep speaking. And if you hear this now, if your soul is stirring, if your spirit is weeping and you don't know why, you were brought here for the same reason. To burn. To remember. To speak. So lift your voice, even if it trembles. Because the time for silence has passed. Return to the fire. This is not the end. This is the crossing. This is the final echo before the silence becomes unbearable, before the shaking begins. And so I speak now not from confidence, but from obedience. Not from pride, but from sacred fear. Because I made a vow. And this is the moment I was brought back for. There is a war. A quiet one. But it is everywhere. It is not fought with bombs or banners, but with silence, with forgetting, with comfort that numbs, with lies wrapped in logic and coated in mercy's counterfeit. It is a war for the soul of generations yet to breathe. It is a war for the unborn. It is a war for the unspoken. It is a war for you. And many don't see it, because the world is asleep. The world scrolls and sings while the blood cries out from the earth. The world builds towers of technology while the foundations of truth crack beneath our feet. The world is blind, but the veil is thinning. And those who are watching, those who are listening, know it. You feel it in your spirit, don't you? That tremble, that ache, that strange weeping that comes for no reason when you're alone. That sudden weight in your chest when you see a child's face. You are not broken. You are awakening. You were chosen to hear this, not because you're better. Not because you're worthy, but because you're willing. Because something in you remembers. Something in you was marked before time. And that part of you, the part that knows this is truth, it's rising. The enemy fears that part. Because when it awakens, you will no longer tolerate silence. You will no longer hide in the shadows of distraction. You will no longer sit while altars of convenience consume what is holy. You were chosen to hear this. Chosen to remember. Chosen to repent. Chosen to rise, not in hatred, but in holiness, not in violence, but in vision, to speak when it's easier to stay quiet, to stand when it would be safer to kneel to culture, to burn when the world prefers you cold. The blood of the lost baby still speaks. It speaks not of revenge, but of redemption, not of rage, but of restoration. And heaven is still listening. So I ask you now, in the stillness of this moment, what will you do with what you've heard? Will you bury it beneath routine? Will you coat it in excuses and call it balance? Or will you carry it like fire through the wilderness of this generation? Because the time for comfort is over. The time for neutrality is done. This is a generation of choosing. And you must choose. Choose truth even when it costs you everything. Choose light, even when darkness pays better. Choose the gospel, not the version edited for palatability, but the one that breaks chains, casts out demons, and raises the dead. Because it is coming. Await, a reckoning. And only the burning ones will stand when it arrives. Only those who have oil in their lamps, truth in their bones, and love that bleeds will rise when the shaking comes. So I plead with you now, not as a preacher, not as a prophet, but as one who saw what lies behind the veil. You were chosen to hear this. You were brought here to remember. And I say to you now in the language of heaven, the time is now. Choose. The time is now. Choose. The time is now. Choose. Do not harden your heart. Do not reason it away. Do not wait for a more convenient hour. This is the hour. This is the flame licking at the edge of your slumber. This is the wind stirring the ashes of forgotten callings. This is the voice in the wilderness, and it calls your name. He called my name in the dark, and now I call yours. Return to the fire. This is where I must end. But this is not the end, because this isn't just my story. It's yours. You may not have seen the field, may not have felt the fire, may not have heard the laughter of the unborn wrapped in glory, but something inside you knows. Even now, as you sit in the stillness of this moment, something deeper than memory begins to rise. A tear you didn't expect, a name you'd forgotten, a dream you buried, something someone calls. You were brought here to remember, not just what I saw, but what you were always meant to carry. This truth, this fire, was never meant to stay with me. It belongs to us, because you were there too, weren't you? In the silence between contractions, in the ache that never got a name, in the prayer you whispered once and never spoke again. You felt it, the pull in the middle of the night, the invisible weight in the room, the sudden flood of emotion you couldn't explain. That wasn't madness, that was memory, the spirit stirring what the world told you to forget, the ache of heaven calling you back, because heaven has not forgotten, and neither have you. You were there in the dreams. You've seen their eyes. You've heard the cries no one else heard. You've carried names in your bones, songs in your blood, and fire in your chest, even if you didn't know what it was. But now, you do. This isn't just about lost babies. It's about stolen purpose. It's about the war against the image of God. It's about a generation of warriors taken before their time, and a remnant rising in their place. And you are part of that remnant, chosen not to mourn forever, but to burn, to carry this truth into a world still asleep, to speak what no one else will say, to love so deeply it terrifies the darkness, to remember what heaven remembers, even when earth forgets. You were born for this, to weep, to warn, to wonder, to worship, to walk in the light of what you now know. And so I leave you with this. When the noise grows too loud, when the world tries to numb you again, when the silence tempts you to return to forgetting, listen. Listen for the voice that once called my name in the dark, because he's calling yours, and you will hear it. In the hush of midnight, in the eyes of a child, in the space between grief and glory, you will feel it. In the ache that no longer crushes you, but now compels you, you will know. This story was never just a testimony, it was a summons. You were chosen to hear it. Now you must carry it. Let the tears fall. Let the fire rise. Let the silence break. Because heaven is still watching, still waiting, still remembering. And when he returns, he will not forget the ones who stood. He will not forget you. Heaven has not forgotten. Heaven has not forgotten. Heaven has not forgotten. Return to the fire. Return to the fire. Return to the fire. If this story awakens something in you, if the silence inside you cracked open even a little, don't leave quietly. Subscribe to NDE Tales HQ. Not for content, but for communion, for remembrance, for fire. Because this is only the beginning. More testimonies are rising. More witnesses are returning. And the veil is thinning. Let us remember together. Let us burn together. Let us carry what they buried. Return to the fire.